Hello everybody, I'm Lily. I am a PhD student here at Macquarie. I'm also contributing editor for Hearing Research Matters at Hearing Matters Australia. So I'm here with two very well qualified people for an interview today. If I could get you to introduce yourself, maybe we'll start with Bill. Could you introduce yourself to us, please?
Yeah, sure. I go by Bill. Properly, when I publish, I'm going by William L. Martens. I'm a senior research scientist at the National Acoustic Laboratories here at the Australian Hearing Hub, where I also have a role as an honorary associate professor in the Faculty of Medicine, Health, and Human Sciences. It's nice to be here today. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you for coming. Okay, and we also have Chi here. Would you introduce yourself as well?
I'm Chi. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at Macquarie University, a honorary research fellow at the Australian Institute of Health Innovation, and I'm also the secretary of the Parents of Deaf Children.
Amazing. You wear a lot of hats.
Yes. Which one do you want to know?
Yes,
all of them.
all of them, please. So I thought we would start off by discussing some shared questions, and then we can go individually. So our first question to get us going is, you each come from slightly different angles, very complementary research, but Bill with lived experience and spatial sound, and Chi with a focus on participation and rehabilitation. So how do your perspectives in research complement each other? And have you worked together before?
Yes, in fact, we have done some research together. In fact, just last year we published a paper together.
Amazing, congratulations.
Yeah. And I think it comes from a shared interest in what matters to human beings who have loss of some sort. In my case, I had a hearing loss, and I, for 6 years, have had to live with the difficulty of listening to music with one ear. And that's something that I hope we'll have a chance to discuss a little bit today, is what happens when you have to listen to the world through one ear instead of two, because I lost my left ear 6 years ago. And how does that impact the perception of music? And it's a sad story for me, because I used to love to listen to music in stereo, but I also used to love to produce musical recordings in stereo, and now I can't even hear them. I only have the one ear that I listen to music with.
Yeah.
So that's my story.
That's your story. And what about you, Chi?
Yes, I mean, my background is quite technical to begin with, I suppose, where I'm a former roadie / audio engineer, and I did a lot of shows for the Hooly Doolies. So, quite an iconic Aussie children's band.
Very iconic.
Yeah. and I think that was really informative for me, where, I'd be running shows and there'd be, 200 to 500 kids, say, and you'd be out like it's like a festival type thing. And it's not like these kids are old enough to have received any musical training, but it's just so instinctive and so natural for kids to sort of just jump up synchronized to the rhythm, to the beat. And I think it's really indicative of how powerful music is. And so, coming to university was really an opportunity for me to apply everything that I'd experienced regarding, I suppose, the connection and the joy of music, and bringing it into a perspective of sort of rehabilitation, how we can really leverage some of these mechanisms.
So very shared, very complementary, but slightly different areas of research.
Yeah. And we tried doing more collabs when I was in Toronto as well, but it didn't quite work out. But we were interested in sort of emotional prosody and things like that too. So the music of language almost.
Amazing. In your shared work and separately, what can you tell me about how people with hearing loss, how their relationship with music changes after their hearing loss?
Well, it's, again, a sad story, because most people who have lived through most of their life with normal hearing and then losing hearing later in life, they can compare the experience of music after a hearing loss to what it was like before. And so it's a sad loss, because so much is lost. It's different for someone who has congenital or is born with poor hearing or hardness of hearing. They can't compare like that, but it's also worth looking at how music might be better presented for people who have a bilateral hearing loss or hearing impairment. But I think that in my case, I have this lived experience that has informed me what it's like for people who have lost only a single ear. And so that's the only thing that I've been focusing on, frankly. I haven't looked so much at other ways of rehabilitating for hearing loss because I only know about my own experience, but my lived experiences inform me quite a bit about what might be done to help others because I know what's helping me.
And before we get into that, we'll definitely talk. But I know, Chi, you've worked personally really closely with people with a hearing loss for the majority of your academic career. Yeah. How have you observed people connecting with music?
Oh, like readily so. But I guess to touch upon what Bill was talking about, I think I have to give a shout out, number one, to my PhD candidate, Felicity Bleckley, who's doing some really remarkable work centered around, I suppose, these narratives and these journeys. And one thing that's really coming out very strongly is this process of grief. And I think it's something that hasn't really been addressed so much particularly if we look at it from like a clinical perspective as well. It's like, how do we deal with this process of grief? It's incredibly powerful, and most audiologists are trained to really focus on speech perception. Speech and music are very, very different. But yeah, I'm incredibly interested in the almost transformative and creative power of music, particularly when you are undergoing something like hearing loss, and really looking at how music can be this really powerful rehabilitation remediation. And we'll probably get into it a little bit later, I suppose, why I think, music and deafness really go hand in hand.
Yeah. Well, back to you, Bill. I think it's a really good place to jump in and talk a little bit about your own personal experience with music. And just, I know a lot of people are probably watching and wondering, what does music actually sound like through a cochlear implant?
Oh, yeah. Well, the sad story there is that the cochlear implant doesn't really pass music very well. It's natural that the cochlear implants would try to optimize speech because speech intelligibility is really important for social connection and for feeling like you're not alone in the world. Being able to hear people talk and understanding speech is really, really quite important. So you can't blame the development of the device focused on speech for ignoring music, which to a large extent it has. And I can tell you from my personal experience with my own cochlear implant, if I listen through just the cochlear implant, mind you, I still have a normal ear, so I can hear music through that ear still, but if I listen only through the cochlear implant, I can tell you that music sounds very, very different. One reason the low pitch musical instruments are gone because I don't have any low frequency hearing through the cochlear implant. So anything that's like below middle C on the keyboard, not being processed and presented to the array of electrodes that are implanted in the cochlea for me. So I'm not hearing low frequencies. That's a pretty serious hit to being able to appreciate music. But it also just, everything sounds different. Musical instruments don't sound like they used to. Everything sounds different. It's really a different world.
And have you had to relearn how to hear music through, or?
Honestly, I've done research on how to make musical instruments sound more like the natural instruments through the cochlear implant, but to be honest, I'm not trying to learn to hear music more normally yet. I'm working on what might be done to make it work better and sound more natural. However, I don't spend much time listening to music through the cochlear implant because I don't like it.
That's totally fair. Yep.
I like listening through my normal ear, even though I still only hear one channel and not the lovely spatial expanse that music used to occupy in front of me. The stereophonic soundstage used to be a joy to hear, and now I'm just listening through one ear or the other. Can't listen through both at the same time because they're like two different auditory systems.
Do you use any like multi-sensory supports? Do you use, like...
Vibration?
Yeah, vision, haptics, vibration.
How do you?
Well, absolutely. If I'm listening through the cochlear implant and I want to feel the low frequencies, I can hug a subwoofer.
Yeah.
And then I've got the low frequencies still, and I can feel them, and it's a pretty good sensory substitution, if you like, for the missing auditory sensation. The vibrations that I'm not really hearing, I'm feeling, so I can still feel the throbbing of the bass, so I got the beat that I would otherwise be missing if I was just listening through the cochlear implant.
Speaking of music and deafness, as you just said previously, they do go hand in hand, or do they go hand in hand? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, sort of conceptually and empirically, I don't think of music as just this auditory sort of focused experience. I think most of us do, and if you ask sort of any person on the street, it's like what music is, it's like a listening activity. But I think if you think about taking a step back and think about music as something that's multi-sensory, I think that has a lot of benefit. So if you think about like a violin player, right? You've got your violin, you've got your bow. Like, in order to make sound, it's reliant on motor control and movement. So it's not just about here, but it's now motor controls. You might have like sheet music in front of you, right? When you're first learning music, so you're using your vision, you're using a visual system to read these things. And everything is obviously also being passed through cognition, attention. It's leveraging a whole range of what I would describe as like a full body workout to some extent, right? And I think, say we now remove the sheet music, now we're asking someone to be creative or use memory. So we can really leverage a lot of these cognitive abilities. If we have an ensemble or a group-based piece, now it's become a social experience. So I think there are many ways in which we can sort of conceptualize and think about music. And by thinking of it as a multi-sensory sort of discipline or aesthetic, I think that really makes it aligned with individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing to really participate, engage, and flourish with music.
I see you nodding along there, Bill. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, it's true. What she describes as the motor component, I mean, how we move while we're listening to music. Well, everybody likes to dance to music, but actually performers also typically move to the beat in such a way that they are synchronized, physically with their bodily motion together. And when they hit the groove together, they're all moving together, and they can look at each other. They don't have to say a word. They know they're in sync. And the great thing about that, it's a magical moment when you look at another musician you're performing with, and you both know without saying anything that you're really in the groove together. And not only do you know you're in the groove together, but they know that you both know it at the same time. So it's kind of magical.
It's even, if we even think about like just a typical ear function, right? If we think about the eardrum and cochlea in terms of like a sense organ, it's fundamentally all about vibration, or it's really just hypersensitive touch. So these things like vibration and haptics and feel are all inherently a part of listening to. So it makes sense that they're also a part of music.
Absolutely. And I have heard, I don't know if it's a myth, maybe you can speak to it, that when a choir sings together, all their heartbeats sync up.
Yes, they do synchronize. You do get like this level of biological entrainment. It's a function of a couple of different things, right? So I think
it's not magic, is it?
Well, number one, if you think about the biological function of singing, it's a lot of breathing, and you are sort of exhaling or producing sounds in a similar way. So you are going to get like your heart rate is just going to sort of synchronize, probably because of that breathing function and like the vocalization function. But we also think that's one of the mechanisms for why group-based activities, particularly something like choir, where you have to synchronize your singing, is a really excellent way of bonding. we tend to bond really well through music and through synchronized rhythm, essentially. It's why you can have unity in like a mosh pit. You know, it's hard to see people doing coordinated things, but like music, like the drum beat, you can really see it in action. And that can be leveraged for good things like pro-social behaviors, like when you go to a nice gig. But it's also been leveraged for more, you know, like it's a reason why military forces will march, right? It's that form of synchronization as well. So you can leverage it in lots of different ways.
And can you leverage it in a sort of therapy for people who are hard of hearing?
100%. So that has very much been a focus of my work since my master's, essentially. So I'm very interested in sort of the remediation and the rehabilitation sort of benefits of music. And really, number one, it sort of goes back to that idea that it's multisensory. So it engages a lot of different sort of senses and processes and cognition. So that's always going to be a good thing. But I think music has really two specific advantages, right? Like when we look at music generally, musicians are excellent listeners, number one. So professionally trained musicians perform better in noisy environments. And that's really critical in modern industrial society, where any social activity we go to, it's the restaurant, the pub, the club, these are noisy places, right? So we being social beings, we just generate noise. And that can make it really hard for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing to be able to communicate. So musicians are really good at that. And I think it comes down to, I suppose, the way that I think about it is, it's a really weird thing that we spend so much time listening, right? From the moment we are born, or even before we are born, we are already listening in the womb. And yet we are never formally taught how to listen. That, to me, is profound. Like, we're never formally taught how to listen. We learn mathematics, English, science. We're never taught how to listen. And the closest thing we have to that is music. So music instruction, to me, is the closest formalized instruction of listening. And so that's the one benefit, right, where it's like communication and speech perception benefits. The other benefit is this idea of social connectedness. So we know that a lot of individuals who are deaf and hard of hearing, their psychosocial outcomes are reduced. They report higher rates of loneliness, likely because they don't want to go to these social spaces. It's too uncomfortable. So music really facilitates these two things. It's sort of like, well, why don't you join a choir? Because number one, it will probably help you with your communication and listening skills. And number two, it's a really nice excuse for you to socialize and maintain those social connections. So for me, it doesn't just go hand in hand like music and deafness, but actually I think music is ideal for deafness.
Beautiful. What do you think of that, Bill?
Oh, well, absolutely. The social benefits, I mean, it goes beyond just being able to communicate with each other, which is what you say about spoken communication. It's really important for feeling connected with people, that you can converse with them. But there's a whole other level of connection that's available in musical activities, especially activities together, like singing together. And this is what Cheesework is, with people singing together well and being trained to sing together well, even though they have hearing difficulties. I'm aware, for example, in my case, I'm not singing together with people as much as I used to. I don't need to go on and on about my own personal case so much, but I do have this lived experience that might be worth sharing.
It's very important, and we'd love to hear it.
The difference in my vocal performance, because I used to sing harmonies with other musicians in a band. We're all playing guitars together and we're all singing harmony together in live performances, but I can't do that anymore. With only the one ear, it's so difficult to hear out the different voices and segregate all the different musical parts that I used to hear effortlessly. It was an effortless thing to hear all the parts so that I'd know exactly where to hit with my harmony part. And you know what? I can't do it anymore. I lost that only because I have the difficulty segregating out all the parts to hear where my part's going to fit. And so I've lost that ability because I only listen with one ear now. Mind you, that ear is still a fairly normal ear. At my age, everyone has a little bit of high frequency loss, and I do too, but I can still hear people singing, but I can't sing as well as I used to. So I, for one, would love to be more involved in singing than I am now. It's only when I went to play with my band again that everyone said, "Hey, Bill, are you okay?" I said, "Well, no, I'm not really okay," because they know that I'm not singing well. And I used to sing much better.
Yeah.
So now I can't do that anymore. It's too sad.
That's very interesting.
I think there's also one thing to be said about, from your perspective, I suppose it's like a mismatch in sort of perception, right? Another way of sort of framing music, and we talk about this a lot because there is such a strong process of grief, or in your case, I suppose it's this disconnect of what you expect music should be and what you are what the cochlear implant is generating. It's just not as good as what you want it to be. But there is a whole other field that we call like music appreciation. So we try and separate ourselves a little bit from the perception or the accuracy of how things sound, and really focus on just the fact that, okay, you're here, you're participating, you're a part of it. And the idea of appreciation is that, to some extent, you don't need like perfect hearing, right? And you don't need to have all of this knowledge about sound or music to necessarily enjoy music. So that is like a very complex reframing as well that can take a lot of time, particularly, I suppose, because you have such a strong musical background. You have this expectation of what it should be, and that disconnect can be very difficult and challenging to overcome. But there are other cases, other individuals where they do leverage that memory. So they use that memory of what they expect it should sound like to help them actually adjust, get used to the cochlear implant, so they can listen to it and be like, I know what this song should sound like. I know it's not quite sounding like that, but I'm just going to keep going through the process, keep it on loop, keep it on repeat, and over time, with some luck, like there should be some level of adjustment.
Can music still be a source of connection for people with hearing loss?
Oh, I think it is, even if they may have a memory of how much better it used to sound if they have a sudden loss like I had. I still think that music is, especially for group experiences, performing together, even if somebody has a loss of their skill at performing on an instrument that needs to be in tune with the other instruments. I mean, I played a violin, and it's really hard to play violin now because you really have to hear it well, being an instrument where you have to put your finger in just the right place on a
especially on your
fretboard
left
with no
side.
frets.
Yeah.
So the thing is, you can drum together, and drumming is still possible for me, and I love to drum now, and join with people playing rhythms together, and that is a social event and an opportunity to really enjoy that more spiritual connection with people. And this thing keeps on falling out. I think I'll put that on the table. There's the cochlear implant external processor that I'm not using right now because it doesn't help with this conversation so much.
Yeah. I'm glad we could see it. That's really interesting. I was going to ask, how do you think your taste in music has changed since your hearing loss and cochlear implantation?
Yeah. Well, it's probably changed more than. I have to think about it a little bit to think how much it's changed, but I definitely do listen to different music now than I used to.
Is it a little simpler, like less complex in instrumentation or composition, or has the genres changed?
Yeah, I don't. I don't enjoy listening to the music that I used to. I used to play a lot of jazz and listen to a lot of jazz, and now it's more like I listen to music because I like to hear the vocals and follow the melodies and the words. So I guess one thing I might say is I listen to instrumental only music, music that is only instrumental, a little less, and a little more vocal music now.
Yeah,
That's a change.
I mean, that matches some of what's his name, Wim Boyan's work, where they were doing some experiments, and they'd have a mixing console in front of like a CI user, and definitely the CI users had a preference for two things. It was the vocal track being about, I think it was about 3 dB higher, so a little bit more speech intelligibility, and also having the drum track, so having that rhythm to support the whole composition, that being a little bit louder too.
Well, I can say that makes sense to me only because if I had the choice to do that, I would drop out any instruments that are in counterpoint with the melody, because with the vocal performance, because it makes it harder to follow the vocals if you've got all this other activity going on that you can't really segregate out all the different parts like you used to. So it's too complicated, and so it's going to be better to be simplified by having the rhythm track going and the vocals over top of it.
Quite a few of the CI manufacturers also have Spotify playlists. So they've generated these playlists that are a little bit more vocally focused. And in terms of the composition, they're paired back a little bit. And it's typically the recommendation as well, if you're sort of trying to get back into music, sort of post-implantation, for example, is to really start with more basic, fundamentally simpler music. And as you sort of adapt, then add more layers, find more complex music. But for me, I suppose it's like, as long as you're listening to any music, I'm all for that.
Yeah. Are there any misconceptions that you would like to set straight about deafness and music?
I mean, the number one conception is that it's something that's incompatible. I think it's not just compatible, but I think music can be particularly supportive for individuals who are deaf and hard of hearing. The second conception or misconception would be that the exploration of music and deafness is a new phenomena. It is not. We've been doing this for a long time. There are texts from like the 1800s that predate the field of audiology that have been talking about music and deafness. And I think it's really fascinating when you look at how they talk about deafness then and how they talk about it now. And a lot of the same problems still exist.
We haven't solved anything.
We have not. So hopefully I'll still be in a job.
Yeah,
for the
it sounds like
decades.
You have decades worth of research.
I do have one more sort of an elaboration on that point, is that there's more and more interest and respect for research on diversity and inclusivity these days, and we talk about needing to include neurodiverse individuals in more activities that without having the barriers that might be frustrating for them otherwise, stopping them from participating. But there's also a concept that we hear more about these days. It's oral diversity. Oral diversity is recognizing that people hear differently. Each individual has their own hearing abilities, and there's actually a really good project out of Leicester, the University of Leicester, just called Oral Diversity. That's what they call themselves. And they do musical performances together and music appreciation together for people who have all the different kinds of hearing difficulties, and I mentioned neurodiversity as sort of the broader perspective than just oral diversity, but the neurodiverse also have difficulties with particular sounds. The term misophonia comes up. It's like people who have strong emotional reactions to particular sounds. They have to care about what kind of activities they engage in with people, and hyperacusis as well, just more sensitivity to sound and wanting to hear louder sounds and so forth. But within the oral diversity program, we have more activities that include, for example, feeling vibrations together, even holding balloons that vibrate with the music, so you can just have a balloon in your hand that you can feel the vibration in. There are really lovely new programs and new work trying to make music more inclusive for a broad range of individuals with all their different characteristics. So,
Yeah.
and we call it generally diversity, but it means we want to be inclusive of everyone in the musical experience together.
Just with the balloon thing, it reminds me, the parents of deaf children were holding these musical workshops with the Canberra Symphony Orchestra. And so there'd be all sorts of different instruments, and you just basically put the balloon there so that you can feel those vibrations. The kids they can all share and feel those vibrations. And it's so important to sort of engage at these different levels. I think, again, that to me is part of the beauty of music as well. I think there are so many ways in which you can engage with music. So maybe you're more sort of rhythmic seeking, right? Particularly if you don't have good pitch perception. Others might be drawn to the piano because you can see all of the notes right in front of you. Other musicians love the trumpet or any sort of brass or woodwind, where a lot of deaf musicians I know, they talk about the embouchure and the lip feel, the mouth feel, right, is how they can help them with their pitch and melody. So I think that to me is always the diversity of music is really inherently important.
Yeah, and it comes back to what you're saying about the multi-sensory experience. And it sounds like both of you are saying similar things, that music is an innately human experience, and it doesn't matter whether we're normal hearing, hearing loss, something that we can all share and that we should promote. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us for our very first video of Hearing Research Talks. It was lovely to have you, and hopefully we'll see you again both in the future. Hearing research matters.